We're now moving to the upper part of this wall where you're going to see a lot of shoe display cases. I think I've got 40 or 50 shoe display cases within the museum. Some of them are really neat. This is a William Russell back in 1880. Got some really unusual shoes. He's got his Centennial shoe in here, and just a multitude of unusual scientific horseshoes. There's a smaller board there come out of Texas. There's a board up there on top that came off a harness track somewhere. And that man had made him a belt buckle with N and a bar shoe and an A on it. That represents the National Horseshoe Association. This shoe right here behind me came out of Bronson, Michigan. This man was showing a lot of harness horses looking at his shoes. And right here in the center we have a shoe display from Lebanon, Ohio. And then we get into a case from up in Wisconsin. It was in a vet clinic in the early 1950s. Then we've got a board there from Professor George Rich. He and Russell were the two major educators back in the early 1900s. Mr. Rich, he had the first horseshoeing university in Akron, Ohio back in the 1800s. Him and Russell lived in the same state, but the theories about horseshoeing were different. Russell was scientific, Rich was artistic. The other word used in horseshoeing is practical. A lot of practical shoes up here on this wall. Down here at the end, we've got Bud Beeston, who had a shoeing school at Sperry, Oklahoma. He probably taught as many horseshoers in this era that we live in now. And I'm talking about since '65. In the 1900s, there were 14 million horses in the United States. In the 50s, it got down as low as 2 million. But the 60s, as things began to really develop and the baby boomers were getting a little bit older, horses became luxury items. The events with horses started happening more. And therefore, the old cavalry shoers that was around taking care of horses were kind of fading out, and new generation of horseshoers coming on. In 1965, there was 7 or 8 horseshoeing schools developed. You had Cal Poly out in California, you had Bud Beeston, you had Les Hullenbach up in Illinois, you had Al Pinson down in Texas, and just a multitude of those schools were started in the 60s. Actually, Don Canfield wrote a book. It became the textbook back in that era for shoeing horses. So things have really changed in this wall of shoeing horses.